It's time to finally figure out the most complicated, popular cartridge family in the world, the 22 Rimfires. Hey everyone, you undoubtedly know about the 22 Rimfires, but what you probably don't know are all the details. Why is this cartridge family so complicated? Can you shoot a 22 short in a 22 long rifle and vice versa? And what the heck is a 22 long? And can you fire all of those in the 22 Winchester Magnum rimfire? No. That's the simple answer. Let's go way back in history to the invention of the first metallic self-contained cartridge in 1845, the Flaubert BB cap. This gentleman from France took essentially a musket cap and put a tiny bullet on top of it, a BB, and bingo, there was your parlor gun that shot about, I don't know, maybe 200 feet per second, driven by nothing but the primer itself, no powder. Well, years later, in about 1957, a gentleman named Smith with Smith & Wesson had a revolver for which he wanted a small cartridge, and he made it a little bit longer, called it the 22 short. And that's kind of where things got started. The 22 short then grew to be the 22 long in around 1871, and then the 22 long rifle came along, and all of those are sort of maybe interchangeable, but the 22 Winchester Magnum is not. 1959 for that one, and it is really a completely different cartridge. A little bit bigger in the body and a completely different bullet. And that's something really weird about the 22 long rifle, short and long. They used a really strange bullet that is rebaited at the heel. And we're going to pull in real tight and show you this. I used the pliers to pull these bullets off of a 22 long rifle. And the result is the heeled bullet being exposed. The bullet diameter is actually 0.223, but the heel is slightly less because it fits inside of the cartridge case. The same diameter on the 22 for the cartridge case and the bullet head. So the bullet's base has to be heeled to fit down inside of that case. So that's one thing that's different about the 22 long rifle, long and short, that are different from the 22 mag. The 22 mag uses a standard 0.224 inch diameter bullet, and the case is wider than the bullet, so the bullet is seated deep into the case and then crimped shut. And it's really hard to pull off with the pliers too. Trust me, I tried. Now, if you ever wondered why some 22 cartridges were gray lead, that's just a pure lead bullet, it's because it's inexpensive and it's heavy, and that's how they all started. But why are some of them coated with copper? That's just a little wash of copper to add lubrication and to protect the lead from oxidizing. And on this bullet tip, you can see the oxidation. See how that's getting a white film on it? So if they're exposed to oxygen over long periods of time, they can oxidize like that. And that builds up on the surface and can interfere with chambering and even pressures when you shoot them. But if you shoot your ammunition quickly, it doesn't hurt to have that uncoated bullet. But the best ones are coated with wax. These two are both the same age. This particular brand doesn't have a coating, and this one does, a wax coating. And you'll feel that on some 22 caliber bullets. 22 rimfires, of course, are called rimfires because the firing pin strikes the rim. So the primer is located in the rim of the cartridge, which has to be pretty thin in order to get compressed to set off the primer. What they do for consistency and accuracy in target grade or match grade ammunition is to really pay attention to that rim. Minimal tolerances and consistency. And what Federal did several years ago is pretty unique. That little dimple they put in the center, I think that was designed to concentrate the primer in the rim consistently and perhaps drive it, the flame from it consistently into the powder. But they really had some high-scoring match bullets back in those days. Don't know if they still make that, but this is an Ely match cartridge, and it has just a really fine and consistent rim all the way around. The thickness and the diameter of that really makes a difference in the 22s. So getting back to the development of these cartridges, we have to remember that this was in the black powder era. So when they added a little more black powder to the CB cap, to get the 22 short, they added some power to it. So the original might have been going, as I said, maybe 250 feet, maybe 350 feet per second, somewhere in that range. Really, it's good for nothing but maybe some rat control. And parlor games, safe to shoot indoors. Not a lot faster than most pellet guns, if even that. When they went with the 22 short, they added some black powder. That's why they needed a little bit longer case than that musket cap. Ditto when they went to the 22 long. Now, they also increased the bullet weight with those CB caps and the BB caps. You could have some pretty light bullets, 16 grains up to 20 grains. With the 22 short, they went with a 29 grain bullet, used the same bullet on the 22 long, increased the length of that case to get a little more powder in it and drive it a little bit faster. The 22 long rifle used the same case as the 22 long, but instead of the 29 grain bullet, they put a 40 grain solid on top of it for more energy downrange, and they increased the velocity a little bit more. Now, all of them have a standard chamber maximum pressure of 24,000 PSI, and that's why you can't get them going much faster than that. But how did we come up with the hypervelocity rounds? Well, once smokeless powder came into vogue, they started putting those into the 22s, and of course could not fill that case up. And this is something I want to show you. I've pulled a bullet off of this case, and I want to pour that case out on some paper to show you how little powder is in this 22 long rifle high velocity. About 2, perhaps 3 grains of smokeless powder is all that is inside of that case. A very tiny amount, and that's all you need to get 1,200 feet per second. And that was kind of the velocity of the new high velocity 22s. So they went from your standard 22 long rifle to the high velocity version with the smokeless powder. But then later on, they got even faster. These days, you know, there are some hyper velocity rounds that will go 1,300 feet per second, 1,400 feet per second, as fast as 1,680 feet per second. How do they do that without increasing the chamber pressure? They use lighter bullets. Those hypervelocity cartridges will use a 29 grain bullet in what's essentially a cartridge that's built to handle a 40 grain bullet. So you can get your velocities up. And I suspect they play around with some new powders that are cleaner burning and don't raise the pressures quite as much to get a higher velocity. A little bit of magic maybe going on in there. Now, the really confusing thing these days is that you can still buy 22 CB or caps. I don't think you can find BB caps. They make some in Europe yet. They're often called the Flaubert cartridges, but you can definitely get the CB caps, and I think I have one here. Here's one from Remington, CB cap, but it's really not a CB cap. It's a 22 long with a light bullet on it and less powder in it, so it is mimicking the velocities of the original, 700 feet per second perhaps. And you can also do that with a long cartridge. Just don't put much powder in it, put a lighter bullet on it, and like this Aguila 22 Colibri, this thing is only going around 300, 350 feet per second. That's getting down to close to that BB way back in 1845. So this is what's confusing about the 22s. The velocities can be all over the map. The length of the case really doesn't have a bearing on it, but it does have a bearing on what can be chambered in what rifle. Can you shoot a 22 short in a long rifle? You can. Can you shoot a 22 long rifle in a short? You cannot, because it won't fit. Because the cartridge diameter and the bullet diameter are the same, the chamber diameters are the same. So it doesn't really matter if a cartridge is a little bit shorter overall, it will fit into the longer chamber. So if your rifle has been chambered for the 22 long rifle, you could shoot longs and shorts in it. Yet, some of you will say, my 22 long rifle autoloader says I can't shoot anything but long rifles. That's because of the cycling of that action. It's a blowback action most likely, and you have to have enough power to blow that heavy bolt back against the spring pressure to come forward. And generally, a short or a long won't do the trick. Now, the long rifle is falling by the wayside because it really doesn't do anything differently from these other two. In fact, you could say the 22 short could go away as well, and you could just download the long rifle and just have one standard chamber 22 long rifle and change the powder capacities and the velocities and the bullet weights and all the rest of it, and use all of those. But because we go so far back in time and there are so many rifles that have been chambered for short, or short and long but not long rifle, or short and long rifle, and all sorts of things, you just have to understand how all of this works. If your chamber is long rifle, you can't shoot the longs and the shorts. If it's chambered for the short, you can't shoot the long rifle. And you can't be mixing the 22 Magnum in with any of them. You might get a 22 long rifle to fire in a 22 Magnum, but it's not exactly safe. It'll probably split the rim or the case itself, and it won't be accurate. It's not designed to be in that 22 Magnum. That is a completely different cartridge. So remember, heeled bullets, different quantities of powder. The case length doesn't really matter so much as the total length of the cartridge and the chamber size that will fit it. And that takes care of the 22s. Now we're going to run some numbers outside on the chronograph to see just how close to the speeds that are advertised on these various boxes will actually shoot. And then you can ask yourself, why do I want a slow bullet versus a fast bullet, a light bullet versus a heavy bullet? The really slow bullets like the CB caps here at 350 to 700 feet per second can be great for training. No recoil, really minimal ricochet. You can even shoot some of these little Colibri loads indoors in a safe range because those bullets are going to be easily stopped. But I have found them awfully good for small game hunting at close range, and I've enjoyed shooting some of the forest grouse that do not fly for shotgun shooting, but sit up on a limb and look at you. If you love to eat grouse, you head shoot with one of these slow little bullets, and you got perfect meat for the pot. So that's one use for it. I know some older guys who use those for tree squirrels at close range as well. Go for the headshot, you don't damage any meat, you've got a perfect situation for fine dining. That's something you can do with those really slow rounds. The 22 short is also extremely popular for small game hunting, rabbits and squirrels in the head. You got a little more power out of those though, so if you do need to take a shoulder shot, it's going to do the job. You can also get those bullets with a hollow point, which will increase a little of expansion there, do a little more damage, a little more shock on the victim. So you've got an option there. With the long rifle, you can go with the hyper velocity. That will deliver more energy at closer ranges. But at farther distances, because those bullets are lighter weight, they're going to have a lower ballistics coefficient and they will not carry that energy as far as the 40 grain solid or the 36 grain traditional hollow point would. But you do get more smack up front with the higher velocity. The longs, once again, there's really no reason to have them. It's just sort of an in-between thing. But that's kind of a basic story on the rimfires. I would recommend, if you are looking for the most versatile 22 rimfire rifle, get one that will take all three of these, especially the short and the long rifle. And that probably won't be an autoloader because, as I said, you need the power inside of the long rifle version to cycle that action. But get a pump, or a lever action, or a single shot, or a bolt action, and you can precisely deliver bullets of varying velocities and weights on varying targets, and you have yourself an incredibly versatile tool. Remember, the 22 long rifle has been known to have taken everything, pretty much every game animal in the world, including, they tell me, an elephant that was stomping someone's garden, and to shoo him away, they took a shot at him, or several, with a 22 and just happened to hit the right artery and bled out. And it's been used to stop polar bears invading tents up in the Arctic. So strikes you as a little bit small for those kinds of creatures, but it just goes to show what a well-placed bullet with minimal energy can do. So don't hesitate to pick up a 22 a long rifle or a 22 rifle of any kind. Understand those cartridges and bullets and what they do, and you're going to have yourself a high old time with a fairly inexpensive rifle to obtain, to shoot, and to maintain. It'll last for generation after generation. Hey, this is Ron Spomer wishing you 22 rimfire safety and security and happy shooting down the road. Until next time, hunt honest and shoot straight.